Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Community. I have a fan favorite here. I've got Ben. Hi, Ben.
Hey.
You know what I find so funny is Ben works with me and Maria, and we are, hype. Ben's medium hype, which we'll take because he's awesome. And he works on all of our podcast marketing stuff. And it's been really cool to see how much, firstly, it's been really cool on the podcasting side to see how many new podcasts we've launched in the last year. So many awesome podcasts, so many cool people, lots of business podcasts, but also other niches as well. And people who are really serving a lot of people. And so that's been really, really great that we've been able to launch all these podcasts. And also, we get a lot of questions about podcasting. And so Ben gets a ton of questions about podcasting. And so we want to debunk one of the main questions that we've got.
Yeah. This is this topic. I'm trying to figure out how to pose it because it's so we're trying to answer so many questions, I think, in this episode.
Yeah.
But it's really if you were to start a podcast over, Kristina, if the community podcast was at day one, how would you build out your first season or first few months of the podcast? Would you have a podcast? Would you have seasons to your podcast? How many episodes would you bank before you launched? Would you take breaks? All this kind of stuff. So we're gonna try and dive into that and kind of discuss what are the pros and cons to the different ways in which people set up a podcast from the get-go. So the first is that question of do I just bank 10 episodes and do I launch 10 episodes of my podcast and then take a break and that's kind of all you plan for after the got?
Yeah.
What do you think about that as a concept?
Okay, I know that we get this question a lot with launches, Ben. I don't know if you would agree, but is how to sustain a podcast. A lot of people the fear in getting started is what will I talk about? How often will I talk about it?
Yeah.
Even though they love what it is that they're doing, it's hard for them to sustain it. And so I think a season is a really great way to be able to test that out. We've actually had a number of people launch saying they're going to do seasons and then the season never ends because they just have so much fun doing it. I don't know.
Yeah. Season one forever. That's what the community podcast is on.
Yeah.
Still season one forever. So longest season ever.
Longest season ever. How many episodes are we at? 350? Probably more.
Yeah.
350.
Over 350.
Crazy. It's crazy. It's been so fun. But I actually, even when I was starting the community podcast and thinking about if I was to start now, I never really thought about the end. I just kind of was I'm going to do this for as long as I can kind of sustain it and go from there. Yeah. I really do encourage people when they launch to have a bunch of episodes banked. One, you want to drop a few episodes on your first launch, 100%, just to get some hype going.
Yeah.
But two, more than that, I would say you want to get in the energy of it, always be a little ahead, because there was a time, must have been kind of pre-Ben era. I was pretty last minute with my podcast. I'd be I'm recording. It's supposed to come out on Monday of next week. And I think we went to 2 episodes when you started working with us, didn't we? Or was I already at 2 episodes?
I think you just recently switched to it.
Yeah.
Well, I was working with you, but not on the podcast.
Yeah, and because I just had so many things to say. So it's so many words.
Yeah.
But a big piece of this, I think, with seasons is that it is a really great way for you to just capture a few episodes, kind of do a capsule. We've seen people do this where it's maybe it's a limited series podcast where they just want to talk about one thing. They actually don't really intend on it being a podcast, but more just a resource. Yeah. That's one way to do it. But I would say seasons are a great way for you to see if you like it, for you to be able to take breaks. But the problem with seasons, which is the womp of it a little, is that it can be hard to monetize a podcast that has seasons, just because it does hurt your downloads for you to be stopping. Every social media, everything likes the increase of time. They want people committed to it. People start to get excited. They start to wait for you. They start to be part of what you're doing. And if all of a sudden you're okay, I'll be back in the fall, it does take away some of that momentum. But a relaunch of a second season does give some little boost. So it can be tough. I would say if it's between podcasting and not podcasting and just doing a season, I think a season's a great idea. But I think there is something to sustaining it.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the harsh truths of podcasting is that more podcasting is typically better for podcasting.
Yeah.
Where it's it's you want to show up with such high energy, high quality. You don't need putting out a bad product. But there is kind of a messy and kind of consistency factor to podcasting that just kind of wins out ultimately. You are probably in the long term better putting out podcasts that you don't think are very good than putting out nothing.
Yeah.
And we find this in our launches, like you're saying, putting out 3 or 4 episodes on a launch day is actually a really good way to get in the charts and really have a splash, because it's not a fixed pie. It's not like, oh, I have an audience of 100 and 25 will listen to one episode and 25 will listen to that's not how it works. You're actually giving them the opportunities for one person to count toward for 1, 2, 3, 4 times for just the one listener, which not only builds your authority because they're hearing 4 messages from you, but it also boosts your numbers and helps more people find you.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing when it continues on with the seasons, where it's like you're right. There is like these gaps to it. More episodes coming out more regularly is more opportunities for people to find you, to trust you, to know you, to like you, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes we find when people actually do a season that the last episode of their podcast ends up doing really well, because people are actually coming back looking for more. They're like, I need more. I might re-listen to this. I missed this one episode. I'm gonna re-download it, and actually can kind of inflate your numbers. But the reality is you're actually not reaching as many people often with the season style. That being said, I think like when you think about you're like conceptualizing your podcast, it's I think you have to ask yourself a bit of a question of like, am I going to be always talking about like the same stuff? It's like the thing about the community podcast works so well is that like community is like a pretty broad theme, yet it's still highly intentional to who you are and your brand and the business that you're building, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really believe that we put out a single podcast episode that hasn't had some relation to building community around your business, right? There's been some angle for every single episode, even though sometimes it was more of a stretch than others.
Yeah. It's funny because Ben does like all of our marketing. He's Maven, and he'll be like, there was one podcast episode we did, and I was like, Ben, you're not gonna be happy with this, but wait to the 20-minute mark. And he listened to the 20-minute mark, and he was like, Kristina, that was a big left turn. You took a big left turn on marketing. I'll tell you which podcast episode it was afterwards. You know, but actually that has been really key to my success in growing. And those of you listening, I would say go listen to the episode Ben and I did. Must have been last year on like how to double your podcast episodes. Downloads.
End of last year.
Yeah, it was great. People love it and still reference it all the time. But what was huge about that was I stopped letting misaligned guests come on the podcast, mostly because Ben was like, we will not be producing these anymore. But I would just meet people and I'd be like, sure, just come on the podcast. And there wasn't a marketing angle, there wasn't a community angle, and those were our most like least downloaded episodes. And when we actually got structured and we were like, okay, it doesn't actually matter audience size of the person, it really matters the topic. Once we got focused on that, we just saw so much more success, and my podcast downloads doubled that year. So I will say I think there is something to just making sure that there is a structure with your podcast. Like it doesn't have to be, at the beginning I would just kind of riff all the time, and there was something to that, I think, because I love a messy action, and I think sometimes just getting started is fun. But having that structure, and I think Seasons does allow for that. If someone was like, hey, I'm really looking for, some people are definitely more structured than others in terms of our clients, but I'm really looking for structure. I think Seasons are an awesome way to do that. It allows you to get really creative. It allows you to batch as well. If you have that set structure in place, so you could just commit to doing 12 episodes and then kind of see where it goes, but not have to worry about it going on forever.
Yeah, and I think like part of where I was also going with that is like I think like you want to have like some kind of like the intention behind the structure as well, where it's like you're not just doing necessarily 12 episodes and then taking a break for no reason and starting 12 episodes again. Because it's like if you build, the more intention you can build into like the reason why you're doing a season, the more you can sell it to even like a sponsor. For example, hey, like you're starting a business podcast and the first season is all about hiring or something like that. And like you get Indeed as a sponsor. Like that would be incredible. It's like it's aligned. You can very clearly pitch them like, hey, this is where I'm going with this season. This is an incredible resource I'm providing to this ideal listener. This is who we're gonna reach, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then the next season you're like, I'm gonna take it a next step further and we're gonna do like, now that you made your first hire, here's how to manage your team. It's like, oh, now we're gonna get a different sponsor, and this show apparently has incredible sponsors because you get a sponsor and it's Slack or something like that. And it's like, because it's like that helps bridge the communication between team. Like that, man, that's awesome because like you're now kind of showing a journey for your listener to like come along with you through these different stages, and you're also leveraging that for your business by getting sponsors, by updating people on like what services you provide, because you can provide advice on hiring and you can provide support on managing a team. It's like that makes a lot of sense. But so that's not the case. And hey, I'm an expert on, like art supplies. I retail art supplies. I sell art supplies. Like that is my niche, and it's like that's always going to be what I talk about. It's like, okay, might not need seasons because your mission is never really changing.
Yes.
So
I love that. I was going to say too, one of the things that's been cool about the community podcast this year has been we have actually gotten some sponsors, which has been kind of neat because we've had sponsors in the past, but not like specifically podcast sponsors. Like they've always been High Vibe Women sponsors that we've kind of like roped in some community sponsorship. And then now it's been like people have been coming for the podcast, which has been amazing. So that's been just such a blessing. But we have a friend and client who she does seasoned podcasts, and she will get a sponsor for each season. Yeah. So there is something nice to be like packaged, right? So for me, it's like I have to be like, oh, like 10 episodes cost this much, and then we'll do an email or like whatever. But she's kind of like, you can be the sponsor for the seasons and for the season, and it covers all of her production costs. Yeah. And that's what she just asks for, and it works really well. So there's something to that as well, where people like that kind of packaged piece.
Yeah. So I think it's like an intention behind it. There's also like that element to I think people should be considering, and this is actually potentially going to be a different podcast topic, but it's like the idea of like building in like structure or segments or kind of like an episodic kind of like element to your content, which is a huge trend we're seeing too, like online in general. We're actually like even Instagram's like releasing features like short dramas where you can actually like a brand or a company can post like like with reoccurring characters, like little mini snippets of like episodes where it's like follow along this person like working in this coffee shop, and like there's like kind of like that reoccurring like trust built. It's because like we don't trust things we see online, but we do all trust, and we do all recognize story and reoccurring things that we can kind of come to expect and count on. So, and that really should exist in a podcast too. So that one of the ways to do that is through a season where you kind of have like that storyline, that theme that goes throughout it. Or if you're not doing that, it's like what is kind of like the root or the continuing like message that you're reinforcing through each episode, so it feels aligned and attached and similar. So like that could be like a segment at the end of your podcast that you don't have a season. You just kind of keep podcasting, but every episode ends with like a question. It's like how does like community like grow your business or impact your business?
Love that.
Or just kind of, or even just an overarching theme that kind of ties your content in together. That's a huge trend we're seeing, and that might be an argument for seasons. I don't know. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I actually think that like having that kind of theme would be interesting. I just have, you know me, I'm nuts, so it's like I wouldn't be able to keep to a theme. Yeah. But I think this is actually the core of what we're talking about. Is that like seasons could work really well for some people and not others.
Exactly.
Having we actually have a client who's launching with us, our friends at Trove, and we're so excited. I don't think their podcast will be launched by the time this comes out, but keep an eye out. But we're friends with the owners, Tanya and Zoe. We love them, and we went out for dinner with them. And me and Maria are basically like Tanya and Zoe in the non-wellness space. We're like the marketing Tanya and Zoe. Yeah. And you met them, and you were kind of like, I see who is who. And we were laughing because we were talking about podcasting, and the question Tanya asked was like, does this need to go on forever? And I was like, well, it can. Like, think about Lori Harder, think about Layla, think about all these people who have these podcasts that have gone on forever and how much it served them.
How many episodes does Lori have?
Over 1,000. Yeah. She's like,
and Chris too, actually.
It's been 9 or 10 years, right? Yeah. So like, and she's like, I only really started monetizing it like in this later half, right? Yeah. So like the fact that we're already monetizing is amazing. But Tanya goes, oh my God, full body no on the like not doing this in seasons, right?
Visceral reaction.
Yeah, like she literally was like, and then afterwards she came to us and she was like, so sorry that I reacted that way. I realized it actually wasn't a full body no on like the season issue. There was like a full body no on the fact that like I want to make sure I can be prepared enough to keep it going. And like, I really want to make sure if I launch it right. So it's really like people respond to different things. Well, like I launched our podcast in 10 days, right? Like I was like, let's go. And then made everybody do all these things, right? Yeah. And so people have different styles. And I think that's the core of this, is that if a season is going to serve you because it's going to keep you structured, it's actually going to keep you really engaged. Maybe you batch it over a few weeks and then, you go hard for that season and you do a relaunch and 6 months later and you're back at it and you're energized. That's great, because what we do see is podcast fatigue. Yeah. And we see this especially on the agency side where people are like, oh, I'm going to take a break. And we're like, don't take a break, but not because we like from a revenue perspective for our business. Thank you again for all your payments. But more because it's like it does really impact your download numbers. It impacts your long-term success if you're not going to keep it going without strategy.
Yeah, it's so hard because we don't want just people podcasting just to podcast. We want to see them, like in good energy with it, really believing in what they're building, all that, and motivated. So, we do get people who are like, hey, maybe you should take a break, but it does have consequences, and it really does take a hit. And I totally agree. So I guess like the question is, Kristina, if you were to start a podcast over again, would your podcast have seasons? Should a podcast have seasons? I guess your answer is
no. My answer is no. But should a podcast have seasons? It's maybe.
Yeah.
But would my podcast have seasons? No, because I've seen the result of consistent effort, right? Yeah. I've never missed a week.
Yeah.
Never. So it's like
that's crazy.
Yeah. So I had a baby. I've had emergency gallbladder surgery. I broke my arm. Like,
it's funny though, people who think that you record these like same day. You'd be like, you're in the hospital, aren't you? How did you record this podcast? Weeks ago.
Yeah, weeks ago. Actually, and I will say this, like, and just, I don't know if Ben's going to be happy with this, but I mean, he can edit it out. So he runs the show here. I'm just a sidekick. But we do record these pretty far in advance. I won't say the date today. But
it depends. Yeah. Sometimes they come out quick.
Yeah, sometimes they come out really quick.
Because they need to. And other times it's, like this topic is going to, I believe this topic, for example, is going to be relevant like in 2028.
Yes.
So it's like, I know.
It'll come up before then.
Yeah, it will.
But I think, that has been a change we've made since working together, right? Which is that, like, even me, like, guys, like, I'm a marketer. I make us work pretty far ahead. And the reason for that was because it was like life seasons. As soon as I got pregnant, I was allergic to working. I joked, I ran into Ben in the parking lot of our office today and I was like, were you hyping yourself up to go inside? Because I used to sit in my car for half an hour before going to work every day being like, I can't go in. I don't want to. Like, why did I build this life in my first trimester? And then the veil was lifted and I was totally great and I loved working again. And then as soon as I had my baby, I went right back to work because I actually do love work. But I knew in the season of my podcast and like I know how big of a priority this is for our brand and my personal brand. So I was like, I'm going to go hard. So in second trimester, I used to record like one a day and I would go really hard on it. Mm-hmm. Now we have our content days, which I know we recorded an episode about content days. Yeah. Like we have our content days where we go far ahead. That's the way we make it work. So I think for anyone listening, like regardless of what season you're in, guys, like make it work for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's going to work for you in different seasons and other times it's not. But like, I know working ahead and then coming to you being like, oh my goodness, this new feature came out. I'm going to record something on it today. Can this be edited for Monday? I know that works for us.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the ultimate double-edged sword of podcasting. And that's what we deal with the social snippet is we promise to give you the best podcast advice we can, but we can't give you like always business advice. And like, that's what it is. It's like, we don't want you to build something that you hate, that you can't sustain, or that doesn't feel aligned to you. So ultimately, there's certain things that we can't answer. Like sort of, should your podcast have seasons?
Yeah.
we kind of can't really answer that for you. This is our best. This is
the best we can do
at giving you that answer, though.
What I will say to you is that if you feel like you want to get started, but you're not sure if you can sustain it, don't call it a season. Launch it. Wrap it and say it was a season.
Yeah, you can actually add the season numbers after. You can.
There are no rules.
Thanks to our good people at Buzzsprout.
There's Buzzsprout code in the.
They didn't pay for that, but they're pretty good people, so I'll just give them that one.
I actually met them at Podfest. I met one of the co-founders, and he was lovely, and like. It was like his life work to get podcasts out there. I was like, that is the sweetest thing I've ever seen in my whole life.
Yeah. I've only had good experiences with them. That's why we love them so much.
Go Buzzsprout.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, that is kind of it. Ben, thank you for joining me on this quicker than usual episode. When I usually have you on, I keep you here for an hour.
Can I just like rip off? So like this is like the Cliff Notes.
Okay, Cliff Notes. Yeah. So. This is the way Ben and I have different brains. So
I want you, if you're listening to this, it's like what. There's so many good things there, but what did they actually say?
Go.
This is what we said. I think we said that this is that seasons can give you structure, creative focus, allow you to batch content, take intentional breaks, and build anticipation. But the reality is, if you don't have intention behind your season, you're probably just ridding yourself of some of the advantages of podcasting in general. So it's like, do you need that anticipation, those intentional breaks? Do you need that time to be able to batch and get really ahead because you're not able to do that on the fly, which is possible. We do it on the fly, but that is harder for some. And if you don't need that structure, then maybe you don't need a season. So basically, the first season of your podcast is supposed to be kind of a proof of concept.
Yep.
And if you need to kind of go in, like you're saying, with like this is going to be maybe 10 episodes, maybe it'll be more, allow yourself to feel that out. And it's like, man, this is on a rocket ship. I don't think I can afford to stop podcasting. Then don't. That's awesome. But maybe you need that intentional break to build that anticipation, to create focus, to batch content. That's great. So basically, I think we're just kind of saying to start and kind of see where it goes, and that every business is different. But
yeah, and also like, guys, don't compare your like day one to other people's day 100.
Yeah,
and podcasting is actually our job. It wasn't when we started, but if we couldn't keep consistent with our podcast with all the tools we have, all the staff we have, that would be a problem. We get that this is sometimes people's side gig. So do what you can. But yeah, if you want to get started with the season, we're in full support. Of course, if you want to launch a podcast, you can come find us at the Social Snippet, work with me, Ben, and the Social Snippet team. But Ben, thank you so much for being here and answering these many questions people have about seasons.
So many questions.
Can I get a we? Is there a we coming out of you? No we from Ben today, guys.
I feel like my passion shone through this episode.
Yeah, you did a great job. Yeah, you were hype. You were hype.
Okay,
We're 2 episodes away from a we, guys. Let us know what resonated with you, and if you are in a season where you are going to start some seasons, or whether you are going to go full hog.